By the start of World War II, the Wehrmacht already had a large fleet of self-propelled anti-tank guns. The Soviet Union, Britain, and other nations involved in the conflict also built similar vehicles. But Germany was the one that developed a whole system of tank destroyers and assault guns designed for specific roles, and perfected the tactics for using them. That said, none of this was part of the original plan. At the heart of Germany's strategy in World War II was blitzkrieg, combined arms surprise attacks using a rapid, overwhelming force of tanks and aircraft. Simple, cheap tank destroyers were an afterthought, more of a supplement to the countless panzers rolling across Europe. But the situation soon changed. The Wehrmacht had accumulated plenty of obsolete tanks of their own, and then they got their hands on lots of captured Czechoslovakian vehicles. Instead of scrapping them, Germany decided to put them to good use, converting them into specialized vehicles for breaking fortifications and fighting light targets. That's how the Panzerjager I was born. Alket took the chassis of the early Panzer I and mounted a captured Czechoslovakian VZ-36 anti-tank gun on it. By early war standards, that gun packed enough punch to deal with most armored targets. The design was brutally simple. It was an open-top vehicle with a cutout for the gun and places for the crew. The conversion was cheap, but that was enough to make the new SPG more practical in its niche than the original tank. The Panzerjager I saw its combat debut in France in 1940. Against more modern tanks, its penetration fell short, but the concept itself proved solid. The vehicle was a handy alternative to towed anti-tank guns. After France, Panzerjager Is fought in Libya and on the Eastern Front, where they performed well against light Soviet armor. From there, the Germans had their general approach all figured out. Ditch the heavy turret in favor of an open-top casemate and mount a more powerful anti-tank gun. That's how the Marder, meaning Martin, was born. The first vehicles of the family were built on the chassis of captured French FCM-36s and Lorraine 37Ls. But the most famous of the lot is the Marder III, built on the Czechoslovakian VZ-38 chassis. Instead of a turret, these vehicles carried modified Soviet F-22 semi-universal guns, as well as German long-barreled 75mm guns. The Marders were cheap, reliable, and easy to maintain and repair. Their firepower could handle most Soviet tanks right up until the end of the war. The main weakness never went away, though, and that was their survivability. The crew was only protected by a thin layer of armor, and the open-top design made the whole vehicle very vulnerable. Some tank destroyers were originally designed as bunker busters. The Dicker Max, for example, was intended partially for use against the fortifications of the Maginot Line. Unlike the Panzerjager I and the Marder, the Dicker Max was built as a standalone vehicle on a modified Panzer IV chassis. It carried a 105mm gun capable of taking on just about any tank of the era, including the Soviet KV heavy tank. But the design didn't really pan out. 2 prototypes were field-tested and even saw combat, revealing a vehicle that was too slow and too vulnerable to flanking fire. The same weaknesses that were merely inconvenient on a Marder became fatal flaws on the Dicker Max, and as such, it never entered mass production. Still, the idea of mounting a powerful gun on a Panzer IV-based chassis remained very appealing. In 1942, Alket built a much more successful tank destroyer, the Nashorn, meaning rhinoceros. It used a universal chassis that combined components from the Panzer IV and Panzer III, tanks that had already been in production for a long time. In place of the turret, they fitted a long-barreled 88mm gun with excellent ballistics, an ideal tank-killing weapon. Compared to the Dicker Max, the Nashorn was far more mobile and came with better optics. On the Eastern Front, the Nashorn proved to be a fearsome adversary. Vast fields dotted with tree lines made for perfect hunting grounds. The vehicle's superior range and excellent gun handling made it extremely effective there. On the Western Front and in Italy, though, the vehicle was less effective due to the more wooded and rocky terrain. The Nashorn, Marder, and other tank destroyers appear in War Thunder at the early and mid-tiers of the German tech tree. Just like in real life, these are excellent ambush vehicles and long-range snipers. What tactics do you use with these vehicles in battle? Share your experiences in the comments down below.